Okay, good. There we go. Okay, well, thank you everybody who's here today. This is the, we don't have the number of the session of the CARC Emerging Centers monthly non-unconference call. Today, we're going to continue our National Research Resources series and speak about Cloud Bank Jetstream, and also learn a little bit about Internet 2's class program, which is Cloud Learning and Skills Session. We have our guest speakers are Amanda Tan from Internet 2, Jeremy Fisher from IU and Jetstream 2, and Naomi Alterman from SDSC and Cloud Bank. Let's see. Here on the screen is just myself. I'm Jane. Rich Nepper is a co-coordinator, and this is a list of our steering committee and very helpful assistants: Kirk Ann, Patrick Clemens, Alex Feltis, Susan Ivy, Preston Smith, and Jason Wells. We're always looking for additional participants that can help us drive what we talk about each month. So if you have an interest in volunteering, we just meet for about 30 minutes once a month and have kind of some fun and talk about what we may be wanting to do in the future. So please contact any of us if you're interested in participating. So I think we'll go next with Rich has something to share.
I do. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, CARC is the Campus Research Computing Consortium, which advances the frontiers of research by improving the effectiveness of RCD professionals, including their career development and visibility, and their ability to deliver services and resources for researchers. Emerging Centers, which is the track that you're in currently, is joined by 4 other tracks in the CARC system: the researcher-facing track, the systems-facing track, data-facing, and strategy and policy-facing track. And these are all separate discussions ongoing on a monthly basis, just like this call. In addition to the tracks and the people network, there are working and interest groups that are focused on accomplishing specific goals for the CARC community, such as the capabilities model, which helps centers define their capabilities and ability to support research locally, the professionalization working group, stakeholder and value propositions working group, the ecosystem decadal survey and engagement working group. And all of our CARC operations are supported by the chairs and the logistics operating group that keep us all safe, sane, and happy. So this is the CARC organization. You can find out more at carc.org, including getting on mailing lists, finding out more about the other calls, and seeing archives of this channel's calls on the Emerging Centers page.
Great. Thanks, Rich.
And if you haven't joined the call doc, I'm pasting the link into chat. Please join our call doc and sign in under the sign in section.
Very good. One thing that we're trying to remember to do each month is to ask anybody that's new to the call or new to the community if they wouldn't mind either introducing themselves, kind of telling us why you might be here. You can turn on your video or not if you'd like to, or just at least put something in the chat and say that this might be your first time attending and maybe what you're looking to get out of attending these calls, because we want to build our community in a way that we know what people's needs are and that we know kind of who's new, who somebody else maybe can reach out to and talk to. We all have common problems. So one of the great things about this community is that, if you bring up something, you may find somebody else, you probably will, who has had that issue before. And if there are 2 people that have had that issue, then there's probably many more that haven't even talked about it. And we can bring it up then at future meetings. So does anybody new on the call that might be interested in introducing themselves or saying a little bit about themselves? I don't see any hands up. I don't see anybody that I'm going to call out. on my own. So does anybody have anything that they would like to add or just even talk about at future calls? That's another thing that we're going to add every month in the beginning is say, you know, what's kind of hot for you? What's you can put this also in the chat document, but what are things that you are working on now that other people may need help with? For example, my department's being moved back to the IT department from the VPR's office. And, you know, one of the things I've been looking for, asking people about is who do you report to inside the CIO's office? So if you already do report to the CIO, who do you report to so that I can inform the leadership here who that works well for and why? I don't know. What kind of things are you working on, Rich, that might be of interest to this group or might need help with?
Currently, we're working on a task force to deal with data sharing and security in response to the NSPM 33 memo and sort of unifying the Cornell response to security requirements. So at some point, our task force will have a report and I'll be happy to share it.
Very good. Very good. So, you know, those kind of things, but feel free again, either we do have the Slack channel that you can post things, ask requests through the Emerging Centers channel on there, and or just contact us and give us future. Oh, we've got, let's see, we have somebody from Kennesaw State, Ramazan has their hand raised. Would you like to go ahead and speak?
Yeah, I have one suggestion for future topics. I don't know if it is relevant or not. For emerging centers, eventually we grow from a small group of personnel, and then we become maybe 6, 7, or eventually 15, 20 group of people. So I would like to know the timeline of the growth of these centers, and what were the roles in the initial year, maybe second year, third year, how the roles have changed eventually and became the center today. I mean, that's what I would like to know.
I think that's, I think a lot of people would like to know that. Yeah, that would be great. Well, definitely we can add something like that, a discussion, and share that. It's another thing that we're always trying to do is come up with kind of artifacts, ways to make things easier for people. So have a repository of, you know, you can just look and say, you know, you can come here and ask, but you can also look. So that would be a great, I think, piece of information. So thank you. Okay, I think we'll get started on our, go ahead and get started on our conversation here. I believe we'll have Amanda first talk about the Internet 2 class program and share a little bit about that. It's coming up in October, I believe, and then we'll have Jeremy can talk about Jetstream and Naomi about Cloud Bank 2, and they kind of, you know, they're working together on how you should use those two in concert. So then we'll talk about that at the end, probably. I guess we can take questions during anybody's conversation. Is that okay with you, speaker people? Okay. And then Rich and I will watch the chat and raise your hands or just unmute and speak whatever you'd like to do. So, okay, Amanda, can you share your screen? Do we have anything?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and do that. Let's see here. And then I'm just going to leave the slides as is because I have some problems with Google Slideshows freaking out when I enlarge it. So I'm just going to leave it like this. And I'm going to start with just a brief context and take a step back instead of just pitching what's coming up. It's really just giving a brief overview of exactly what CLASS is. So CLASS is the acronym for Cloud Learning and Skills Sessions, but we are actually rethinking if cloud is the end goal of these training programs. So what we're trying to really do with CLASS at Internet 2 is to support workforce development within the research and higher education community. The program is really built for and by the higher ed research community, and it really is trying to do these what I like to call the 3 E's. It's to enable this broad research community to leverage major cyber infrastructure platforms. So it doesn't really matter if you're doing it on-prem or if you're doing it on cloud or combining both. Ultimately, the idea is to increase productivity and collaboration and to help you accelerate time to science. The other E is to strengthen IT research support and institutional capabilities. So not just at the level of the researchers themselves, but to also help RCD professionals and people working at the institutional levels to support cloud-based research. And finally, the last E is to engage, to create this robust community of practice that comes together and shares knowledge, and to really understand and use all these new tools that are being developed on the cloud. And because the cloud platform evolves so quickly, it's only sustainable when the community comes together to share that knowledge. So class really, let me just get rid of this. Sorry about that. So the next slide, our class really consists of 3 program elements. So the first is are the learning modules. It's really learning experiences that serve foundational, going from 0 all the way to advanced learners. So some of the learning modules that we have within the class framework are things like certification pathways. So you can get your Google Cloud and AWS certifications. We help facilitate that pathway, that learning journey, by putting somebody, a faculty member from Notre Dame, to lead some of these certification programs, so that you're not just getting the overview of cloud from the vendor's perspective, but really getting the perspective from how it works within institutions of higher education institutions and the research community. We also have class fundamentals or class essentials, which is 101. How do you get from 0 to the cloud? And then upcoming, as Jane has mentioned just now, there's an upcoming class program, which is called the Class Advanced program, where if you have been in the capacity of helping researchers get onboarded to the cloud, you can come and increase your knowledge and work on some projects, hands-on projects that are very relevant to the higher education community. So some of the projects that you or your colleagues might be working on are things like networking. How do I think about VPC? How do I think about VPCs? How do I think about peer-to-peer networking? How do I think about things like hybrid computing? How do I think about, if I wanted to build a Jupyter Hub for a classroom, what are the institutional challenges that I would face? So something like Class Advance is different from all the training that's already out there, in that it builds on this cohort model. We have 15 participants coming together, learning together in that first week from a big data expert. And then in the second week, applying those skills that they learn towards hands-on projects. And then some of the other class program elements are things like incubators. We partner with a lot of industry partners on boot camps and accelerator programs. So for example, we have an NVIDIA HPC boot camp coming up. We are also working towards accelerator programs, for example, working with Google on RadLab and high performance computing services that they have. And finally, again, all these efforts, the learning modules and incubators, really are going towards building a community. We want to help build that community of facilitators. We want to help build that community, that network of people able to share best practices around cloud computing and to build open source community developed projects. So the ways that we're going about building these communities are to bring together alumni from our class training, and have them come together to do talks and seminars and to have collaborative working groups by continuing to work on some of the projects that came out of the class program. And then finally, I will just make this quick pitch. There is a Class Advanced cohort coming up in October. There is a tier range of prices. It's on the website. I won't go in depth into how much they cost, but early bird is coming up. The price is a little bit high, so I would encourage you to just go to the website and have a look at how much it costs. But we've had a lot of positive feedback from people that have joined the class program, this class advanced cohort, and they are still coming back and working on some of the projects that they've built together. So with that, I will pause and see if there are questions.
Has anybody on the call attended any of the class sessions? I can't tell if maybe nobody has. Well, then this is perfect. Oh, Claire from Claire said her staff has, which is good. Yeah, and maybe, you know, it may not be something that this community themselves will attend, although I would love to, but, you know, please encourage your staff. Estiva, I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right, but go ahead.
No, you're almost right. It asked it, but thank you so much for that, Amanda. So we have spoken before about class, and I've collaborated with you on that. I had some questions about the advanced cohort, and essentially, I think, and just a little bit of background. So I'm.
Oh, I think you cut out. You did for me. I'm not sure if other people can hear you. Oh, it was just me, maybe.
Either that or I went selectively deaf as well. So
okay, good. I was glad because I was gonna say I thought I saw Amanda trying to talk, and I thought, well, maybe I can't hear anybody, but I don't know. You were
yeah.
Oh shoot, you were online talking. We all heard you. Ah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So my question is going to be about like the advanced cohort, and how much of the focus in the curriculum is about integrating cloud with on-prem infrastructure, and how you can get all of it to work together.
Yes, so that's a very good question. I think we have seen a growing demand and an interest in hybrid computing. And so one of the elements that we stressed in the previous cohort, which was in April, was if you're encountering this, we would like you to work on a project. So it turned out that many of the participants in the previous cohort was very interested in how do I do multi-cloud, and how do I do this hybrid of, let's say I have data on-prem, but I want to burst to the cloud. So the cloud bursting piece of it. So it ended up that during that first week of that structured training, where we have an external instructor come in and teach, it was dedicated, I think about a whole day was about the multi-cloud deployment. And then one of the other aspects of multi-cloud deployment and hybrid computing was the networking bit of it. So the networking bit of it, we were able to teach that in the second week during the projects, because we have a networking expert from Internet 2 that does a lot of this sort of work. So there was a hands-on component to that as well. So in order to answer your question, Ashtiva, it's we are going towards having more of these multi-cloud and hybrid deployment training within the cohort.
So Rob from UW said that he highly recommends as an entry path to cloud cyber infrastructure building. Thanks, Rob, for that comment. And Susan mentioned that one of her team members has done this so far, so that's good. Are there opportunities for funding attendance? Is that something?
I would like to be able to offer that. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. I'll be super candid. There isn't right now, but I would love to be able to offer that at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm. I know CASC is supporting a couple of training sessions, and that's one of the things here that we talk about in the emerging centers, is that a lot of us don't have the travel funding or the support because we're small. We don't have big, so it's kind of also a chicken and an egg. It's like, in order to grow, you got to learn all these things, and then if you're small, you don't have the funding. Ramazan, do you have another question, or do you have a question, comment?
For class advanced classes, I look at the website, I see the alumni over there. Alumni are institutions. So do you mean that we should subscribe as an institution or take the course as an institution or individual? So I wasn't very clear on that one.
Oh, yes. So the alumni institutions are institutions that have sent participants previously to the class advanced program. And so they are eligible for a alumni discount. There is also, I think, multiple discount tiers. So for example, Internet 2 has a Net Plus contract. So if you're part of the Net Plus contract, then you also get quite a substantial discount, actually.
So this pricing is per attendee at the institution, right?
Per attendee, yes. From the institution, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And actually, I had a quick follow-up about the funding mechanism. I think one of the topics that I'd be super interested in is really getting some feedback from the community on what's the cutoff, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of training out there. How do we start thinking about collaboratively, what kinds of training does the RCD community really need, and how much, at some point, something's going to cost money. But what is that cutoff point? I realized that there are lots of free training out there as well, but there's not really very much that's catered specifically to the research community or the higher education folks. So I think like having a really candid discussion on what the future, like how do we build that workforce with the understanding that funding is limited, would be something that I'd be super interested in learning.
I think that's a great topic that we could definitely get some feedback from this group. I assume they can email you if they're interested in talking, or we can talk together as a group at another session. But I think that whole topic is really important, and I think to Ramazan's asking how do you grow with people, it's also what do we feel like is the priority for training. You know, I think the LCI boot camp is a great, you know, is a great option, you know, for that kind of training. And then this, and so how do we make this suite of things that people know as they start their centers, that they should start looking for funding to attend these things that we kind of recommend that are supported by the community. So great. Well, thank you, Amanda. I think we need to move on, and this always happens. We think, oh, well, you know, we'll just have a little bit of somebody talk, and then but there's always conversations, which are all good. So, okay, Jeremy, I think we'll have you talk about Jetstream next, if you can. And you should have, I know we tested your screen sharing. All right, go for it.
And okay, it looks like my slides are coming up. Drop that to the side. All right, I'm Jeremy Fisher. I'm from Indiana University. I'm the manager of the Research Cloud Infrastructure team here that manages Jetstream 2 and another internal cloud. I have 78 slides to get through. It'll only take about 2 hours. No, I'm going to work through this as fast as I can to give Naomi as much time as possible. So without further ado, I'll jump in. Maybe I will. There we go. So a little bit about Jetstream 2 is we are a National Science Foundation production cloud environment. We are fully allocated through Access, which is the follow-on to the Exceed program. We are only allocated through Access as part of our grant terms. We're an on-demand interactive resource. We also host a lot of infrastructure for things like science gateways or virtualized clusters or other, you know, infrastructure things that aid in research. We like to call it programmable cyber infrastructure because you can basically take anything that we do and either do it interactively or do it with things like Terraform or as it's called now, OpenTofu. We're building on the success of Jetstream 1. So basically over the course of that cloud, we had about 183,000 users via science gateways, as well as about 16,000 local accounts. We pride ourselves on trying to keep high up times and not coming down for maintenance. So these are all things we're trying to continue with Jetstream 2. So there's a lot of words on the page. I'm not going to read all of them, but what it comes down to is we have a lot of hardware. So a lot of compute nodes. We have 90 GPU nodes. So there's 360 A100 sitting out there for your use. We have some large memory nodes. We also have regional clouds, which you'll see a little bit on the next slide, that are available by invitation and request. We have a shared application store, so we try to make it easy for folks to have common scientific software at their disposal from any of our featured images. You do have full public IP access, so if you want to run things like Jupyter hubs or science gateways, those are available to you. And as I indicated, this is a little bit of a look at the layout of Jetstream 2. So our primary cloud is in Indiana. That's where the bulk of the nodes are, and you can see that list there. But we also have partner nodes, regional clouds at University of Hawaii, Arizona State, TAC, and at Cornell. And just a very high level look at how things are organized. So we have our cloud hardware, and we have the bits of access that sit on top of it. And then we have a whole bunch of different ways to get to Jetstream 2. So, OpenStack provides a couple of things, the Horizon GUI and then the command line interface. There's an interface out of Arizona, one of our partners, called Cacao, which is mostly geared towards automation and Terraform deployments. A lot of people that use Kubernetes go through there just because it makes it simple. We have the Exosphere interface, which is our primary user interface, which is primarily for interactive use. And then we have a lot of science gateways. To date, right now, we have 74 science gateways on Jetstream 2, serving at last check about 171,000 users. So some sample use cases, as I talked about science gateways. So if you are a science gateway creator and you want to make a home for your science gateway to help other researchers, we certainly do that. All research supporting infrastructure and infrastructure as a service that partners up with HPC or HPC adjacent activity or other research activities. Education support. So one of our prime use cases is giving a place for educators to come and have a stable and consistent environment for their courses, so you don't have to depend on either the students' laptops or local computer labs. Of course, domain science, interactive research. So you can think of just about any area of research, and we probably have some variant of it on Jetstream. Jupyter notebooks and hubs obviously are a prime use case for us. Development is a prime use case. Machine learning with all of our GPUs. And as I note at the bottom, your use case here, because there's always one that we've not thought of that somebody brings to us. And, if it makes sense and it can fit, we welcome you aboard. So some key stats, I kind of alluded to these. So presently on Jetstream 2, we have about 1,900 users using it directly today. About 170,000. This actually changed in the last 24 hours as I got some new counts to about 171. But and then about 74 fields of science are presently represented on Jetstream 2. So again, here's a little look at the different access methods that I alluded to on that earlier slide. So you can kind of see a little better look at Exosphere and Cacao, and nobody wants to look at Horizon, which is the included one, and then the command line interface. A little closer look at Exosphere. Our primary mission here is to make it simple. So going from logging in to launching a VM should be a handful of clicks. Being able to manage your VM should be a handful of clicks. But we like to make it easy for people to see everything in one place and to be able to manage things and to be able to use it easily. And you don't have to be a computer scientist to use the interface. So using and preserving VMs, because we all know reproducibility is a key thing. You can install just about anything. I know that it is generally limited to Linux. Here there be dragons, because we will inevitably have somebody ask about Windows. With the help of our partners at Cornell, we do provide a Windows image. Support is a little bit limited, but we do have that there. We do make it easy for you to snapshot and share the images that you create or the workflows you create. We also have a lot of users that either launch a VM and then pull from GitHub or GitLab or pull a container down and work that way as well. So we try to make it easy to have a reproducible and usable environment for just about any workflow. So looking at gateways, so gateway web hosting is obviously a very big use case for us. Data sets and database hosting has been growing in recent years as well. Jupyter Hubs have been a huge use case just because we give a nice place to have an interactive environment, and with Anaconda being in our software library, it makes it easy to come in, type a couple of commands, and you're up and running. And then Elastic Virtual Clusters are one that's been growing recently for folks that want to have either their own Slurm cluster, or they want to basically have a local that will provide local computation and then burst out to other HPC resources for larger computation. And to build on that, the Elastic Virtual Clusters, these are things that are, we have a workflow built into Exosphere. So you turn on it's still under the experimental features, but you turn it on and it's literally, you launch a VM and check a box, and it launches a VM with a head node configuration and does elastic compute nodes. So we try to make it a very simple process for folks that do want to run their own Slurm clusters. It is there and a very easy process now. So a little bit about allocation and usage. We do strive for a zero uptime environment, data center power notwithstanding for anybody that might use it now. We've had a couple of difficulties this year with Duke Energy and others, but we're getting all that under control. You do get persistent IP addresses for the life of an allocation if you want. So every VM that comes up has the possibility of having a live public-facing IP address, and you can keep using that as long as your VM is around. We don't have runtime limits, so as long as there's an active allocation with hours available, you can keep running. On Jetstream 1, we had VMs that ran from our launch date in 2016 all the way through decommissioning in last year. So as long as you keep your allocation up to date, you can keep running. There are no limits for the amount of time you can get. If you can justify it and we can provide it, we're going to provide it. The same with instance core and RAM counts. And the same with storage to a reasonable level. So everybody gets 1 terabyte by default. You can get up to 50 terabytes. We do have some extra space for shared data set storage if you have a use case there. A couple of the things we're looking at there is we have some folks like from Unidata that have larger data sets that might want to use spinning disk. We also are looking at hosting some of the AlphaFold data sets on spinning disk because multiple allocations are starting to use it. But at the end message out of all of this is we are a prepaid resource from National Science Foundation, so there's no dollar price attached to this. And as long as you go through some very minor work to keep it up to date, which is typically for most folks either a paragraph for the smallest allocation size, a 1-page submission for the medium, and up to 3 pages for one of the larger ones, it's very little work to keep that allocation going for years on end. Some acknowledgements. So these are NSF award numbers and whatnot. And our greatly reduced NASCAR slide showing our partners. And we'll look at our artwork. And I hopefully left plenty of time for Naomi and for questions then, Naomi. Figure out how to stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anybody have any questions for Jeremy? If you don't have anything right now, you can always contact him. I think he's very responsive.
Jeremy, how many Elastic clusters would you estimate are running on Jetstream right now?
Right now, I know of about 12 to 15.
Okay.
Now that kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. Now there are a couple allocations that are running multiple. But yeah, typically about 12 to 15 stays constant.
Thanks.
And no, there's no BOS, but you know, if you can make it launch, you can bring it. We do not put restrictions on things. So If you've got an image that'll launch under OpenStack, I want to see it, and two, you can absolutely do it. Ramasan?
Hi, I have one question for about the gateways on the cloud. Typically, the ones that I have seen, they have data already stored on the cloud, and then what you do is you just pick and select some data sets and do your analysis, basically. Is it possible for an application, for a gateway, for the users to upload their data sets and then do the analysis on the cloud? Is it possible or is it allowed? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Is it possible? Absolutely. It mostly depends on the gateway provider if they provide a mechanism for uploading their data sets. If somebody had a particular data set that was large and wanted to make it available all the time, what I would recommend is getting their own allocation to work against and working with the gateway provider and us to make it a shareable volume that they could work through. It's not a hard process, but it takes a little... it takes some button pushing and lever pulling on the back end to make shareable volumes across allocations and on the spinning disk, but it's very doable.
Okay. And second question is, when we apply, and we should go to the access system to get an allocation. That's my understanding. So should we specify that we would like to get service from Jetstream on that application? Is it the way it works?
So the way it works with Access now, and I'm dropping a link to our docs on allocations. It's a two-step process now with Access. So you apply for an allocation and you get Access credits. And then once you're approved, you go to spend those credits on the resource that you want. During the initial allocation, you can say, our intention is to use Jetstream and here's why, and that's great. But yeah, the second part of the process is where you actually pick Jetstream out of the allocation or out of the resources and use it.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good. I always learn something new whenever I hear you talk, Jeremy, and seems like new use cases are always coming up also. So appreciate your sharing.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Okay, Naomi.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and talking to all of you. So I'm a technical education specialist at the University of Washington, and part of my job here is working on the collaboration that we do with UC San Diego and UC Berkeley called Cloud Bank. It actually says host is disabled participant screen sharing. I'm not sure, I think I might have lost co-host privileges. Sorry about that. But yeah, so
you have
great. Thank you. Oh no, you're good. So a lot of the work I do is with this interinstitutional collaboration, which is a funded NSF program. And I think that what we do really dovetails quite nicely with what Amanda presented and with what Jeremy presented with Jetstream, in that we are a cloud access entity that does not build our own infrastructure so much as attempt to smooth the pain points of researchers getting on the cloud as it currently exists in the commercial market. So let's see. Just to briefly talk about the sorts of cloud stuff that we're talking about here, we have worked with researchers to facilitate experimentation using ultra-scale computation, like quantities and numbers of virtual machines that they wouldn't be able to access normally. They've used the cloud to do chip design and EDA work. We have a lot of projects that work on network measurement and understanding the properties of the internet and the clouds that exist within it already. And we have a lot of emerging work in the world of quantum computing and platforms as a service for some of these value add services that companies like AWS and GCP and Microsoft Azure are bringing to the table. But so I guess just to clarify the context that CloudBank was founded within, we are a bunch of researchers who had been working on the cloud ourselves, and our colleagues had been attempting to get onto the cloud. And what we found is that people consistently found it very difficult to do so. When they tried to set up an account to access Amazon Web Services or get onto Microsoft Azure, they found that it was a very time-consuming process and that there was a whole lot to learn, but it wasn't too clear where to start. And for a researcher who doesn't themselves want to become an IT professional, the options become rather limited. There, of course, are always programs like Jetstream that are doing really important work of providing computing clouds that are geared towards a research audience. But if a researcher wanted to make use of one of these large commercial clouds, then they would face a pretty steep learning curve. And so the place that CloudBank fits into all of this is that we are attempting to do sort of a similar type of thing to what Jetstream does, but with the commercial cloud services provided by Amazon and Microsoft and Google. And we also support IBM Cloud and have Oracle's Cloud upcoming on our support list as well. And so the main services that we provide in order to do this is that we provide a web portal, which makes it easy for researchers to access these cloud platforms management consoles. And we provide financial visibility tools to manage and maintain budgets across all of those different cloud accounts. We also have a lot of support contacts within the cloud platforms themselves and have a good support team within CloudBank that is there to help facilitate training and onboarding onto the cloud throughout the entire research process. So we help researchers figure out what resources they need on the cloud. We help researchers put together a budget to propose requests for cloud dollars. We help the researchers once they get those cloud accounts and begin spinning things up. And we're there with them through the process until their period of performance is done and the project is winding down. And so the primary way that researchers get access to CloudBank is through our DCL funding model, which allows any researcher with an active NSF award within the SIZE directorate to request additional funds from CloudBank. And those funds do not accrue towards their funding limit for their NSF project or any future awards they might get. And so this application process just requires a short justification for what cloud computing the researcher needs to do and a 1 year long spending estimate for how much money the researcher expects to spend on the cloud. And then we review these applications internally and notify the PIs within a few weeks and give them their CloudBank accounts. And so I want to emphasize the phrase access entity to make it clear that once you get a CloudBank account, you don't have to learn how to use a new cloud computing system. We facilitate access to the pre-existing web consoles that Google provides and that Amazon provides and Microsoft provides. So if you have people on your team that have experience working with AWS or with Azure, then you'll find that the process of working with CloudBank is largely the same. The main differences show up in the way things are billed and the way user access is managed. And it's also worth mentioning that in addition to this NSF DCL funding route, we also have the ability to provide cloud dollars for other contexts. So CloudBank has a discretionary fund that we use to give researchers tire kicking accounts, which is to say small sums of money, usually less than $5,000, to figure out if the cloud is right for them. And we also use this fund to facilitate community projects and webinars, workshops, anything that requires very light cloud spend, but otherwise would have to figure out how to budget that and go through an institutional reseller. We also have an enterprise program that allows institutions to leverage the software and financial infrastructure that CloudBank has built for enterprise level and institutional level cloud infrastructure. And that's the kind of thing that gets started with a conversation with our support team, but we're more than happy to facilitate. And so that support team includes not just the cloud vendors and not just the University of Washington, but really a whole community of practice full of people both in the tech industry and in academia that have experience using the cloud and making it work for research and making it work for classrooms. And so the main benefit that we see people get from using CloudBank to create an account on one of these cloud platforms is not just that you get a nice login portal, it's really that you are joining a support community that all have similar experiences. And so the CloudBank portal software itself has three main features. The first is that it is a facilitator of access to the cloud consoles of all the major cloud vendors. And once you get a CloudBank award, you can easily shift that money into any of these cloud platforms. So it's a good way if you have a multi-cloud experiment to get funding and apply it to all four of these platforms and to track spending across them. We provide a third-party tool called Nutanix Beam that you can use to monitor the spend across all of your cloud accounts and see how you're doing in terms of your budget. And lastly, we have a user access system that connects with your home institution's user directory through CI logon. So the way that you log into AWS or Azure or Google or IBM is by going to the single sign-on portal for your institution. Like in my case, I use my UW account to log into CloudBank, which then lets me go to the AWS console page. And you get to add and control the privileges of users that you want to share your cloud account if you have other collaborators within your lab or students that you want to give temporary access to these services. We support multiple levels of user hierarchy here. And so just some quick figures about our work so far. We have served over 320 NSF awards, some extra cloud spend so that they can accelerate their research. We currently work with 4 different cloud vendors. That's the slides previously showing AWS, GCP, Azure, and IBM, and Oracle's upcoming. And these figures are actually sort of out of date. They've gone up since then, but we've helped researchers spend over $1.4 million in cloud computing to further their research already, and that number is always going up. And to be clear where this money is coming from, this is money that the NSF has allocated towards facilitating researchers using public cloud infrastructure and not coming directly out of these NSF awards budgets. We also, I'm not talking too much about Berkeley's work with CloudBank here because this is a research computing focused talk, but we do a lot of work helping community colleges and other institutions set up Jupyter labs for classroom instruction And so UC Berkeley is the primary driver of all of that, and they have been working with over 15 institutions at this point, serving over 800 students. And so I hope that this clarifies a little bit of what CloudBank does. It can be kind of hard to summarize because really, rather than providing one specific service, CloudBank is just a general access entity whose aim is to ease the friction points of researchers trying to use commercial cloud platforms. And so really, whatever questions you might have or hopes about ways that your research might make use of this stuff, I encourage you to email help@cloudbank.org, and that is our help desk, which is seen by me and by my colleagues at UCSD and at UC Berkeley, and we can see if we can be of service to you. Whew, how did I do? Okay, 10 minutes-ish, so we have 4 minutes for questions.
You did great, thanks. I know it's a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions, or do they need to let that all sink in a little bit and maybe send an email to the CloudBank email for help? I guess I have a question. So when you say the grants in the CISE and the size division, what if well, I guess I was going to say I have somebody that's being awarded a TIPS, but that's inside of that. What if you had somebody a researcher that had been, or that's submitting, say, through physics or one of the life sciences, what happens then?
It's a great question, and I think that it's really relevant to the point that CloudBank is currently at, where we've demonstrated the success of this model, but entirely within the size directorate, and we're trying to scale beyond that. And so I think that the answer is now is the perfect time for interested researchers to submit applications anyway, send us emails anyway, and this provides us the opportunity to start gathering momentum and open conversations with the program officers from other parts of the NSF. Because we've seen interest from other parts of the NSF in beginning to adopt this model and integrate with the CloudBank program. And the question really then becomes, how much demand is there for it, which can be a sort of chicken and egg situation. And also, how do we start a pilot in which these other directorates allocate some test pools of money and then make those available to researchers through CloudBank? And I'm not sure which of these programs I'm allowed to talk about right now that we have in the works, but I will say that we're beginning to do that experiment with some other directorates, and forthcoming are going to have some solicitations that we're going to open up that allow people to submit justifications for cloud usage and get additional funds, even if they're not within the size directorate. So email us, get in touch. That helps everyone in your field get access to cloud spend through this program.
Very good.
And just a shameless plug. So Jetstream has money set aside for CloudBank as well, as part of our grant. So we are, in fact, we're trying to work on our first use case for it now. So anybody who's a Jetstream user and has a commercial cloud need on top of it, we can help facilitate that with the CloudBank folks.
Very good.
Rock on. Yeah. We're really the mission that drives us is really helping researchers do more and better science. So we are here to work with Jetstream and collaborate with CLASS and figure out ways that we can get researchers access to the resources that they want to use with a minimum of heartache.
And I would I follow up my question with the NIH. What about those funds? I guess same kind of thing.
That is a really good question. My boss and I have a lot of interest in how the NIH and its interaction with cloud systems is going. We work with UW Medicine a lot at UW. Unfortunately, that's a little outside the scope of what CloudBank does. We're mostly focused on NSF research. And I think NIH has its own program. Yes, Strides. Thank you, Rob. So NIH has a program called Strides that we view as very thematically similar to what we do. And we're always sort of learning from the NIH, and they're learning from us about how to help people get moving here. But they're separate, ultimately separate entities.
Okay. Yes, right. I know I've just seen more medicine researchers looking at cloud than just because they have newer use cases. And so.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we'll have them come and talk to us also here.
Yeah, I think that there's a really rich discussion to be had about how to deal with medical research on the cloud, because the cloud is so flexible that it supports a lot of regulatory frameworks like HIPAA compliance, but that is really a whole topic to talk about in itself, which is something that Rob and I do at UW, but CloudBank does very intentionally does not touch.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's a good topic to have a discussion on.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions for Naomi? This was so informative and great. This will all be posted on our YouTube channel. So you guys can all go back and look, or please share with your friends and family who might be interested in knowing more about all these cloud supported resources that are available to you. Next month, in October, our call or our unconference will be around containers. We're going to have somebody from Apptainer come and talk to us, and then also a more data-facing person talking about why you use containers and how, some more from the research side. And there have been other conversations on other tracks about containers. If you're interested in containers, look at the not the emerging centers, but the People Network YouTube channel, and you can find some other topics. So hopefully see you all next month. And thanks again to our wonderful speakers today. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks. Bye.